Welcome to the program. Now, the British government's attempts to stem the tide of articles of mass surveillance have gone beyond intimidating the journalists behind the publications. Just a day after Glenn Greenwald's partner was detained at Heathrow Airport, the Guardian's editor came forward describing how the authorities pressured the newspaper to destroy the documents provided by NSA leaker Edward Snowden. The UK government has reportedly confirmed the move was sanctioned by the Prime Minister himself. Tessa Arceli is in London with the details.
According to the editor of the Guardian newspaper, Alan Rusbridger, he had written that it would happen over a period of 2 months, that he was approached by officials that claimed to represent the views of the Prime Minister and had demanded the surrender or the destruction of all the information that they had on the documents and data that Edward Snowden had given to the Guardian. So in those subsequent meetings that he had with those so-called security experts or officials, Rusbridger had said that he was explaining the job of the Guardian, that they needed that information to continue doing their jobs, and to which these officials apparently had told him, quote, "You've had your fun and now we want the stuff back, and you've had your debate, there's no need to write anymore." And that is how those two security experts had ended up in the basement of the Guardian offices right behind me, overseeing the destruction of some of the computers and hard drives in the office. Now this was written by the editor just a day after David Miranda, the partner of Glenn Greenwald, the Guardian journalist that had first written about those NSA global surveillance information. He was detained, Miranda was detained at Heathrow Airport for about 9 hours, questioned by about 6 agents. Now, he was detained under the Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act 2000. Now, this allows the police to basically detain anyone for up to 9 hours and question them. But Miranda had told the BBC that he was not actually asked questions about terrorism, but in fact questioned about the activities of Guardian journalists with regard to NSA stories. He also talked about what exactly happened at that detention.
They were threatening me all the time and saying I would be put in jail if I didn't cooperate. They treated me like I was a criminal or someone about to attack the UK. It was exhausting and frustrating. I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong.
Now, there's already been outcry from politicians, understandably journalists, but also from the independent reviewer of the terrorism legislation here in the UK. He said he wanted to get to the bottom of this. David Anderson also said he wanted a briefing from the Home Office and Scotland Yard. As far as the Home Office is concerned, they said that David Miranda possessed highly sensitive stolen information that would help terrorism, and also they challenged those critics to think about condoning the leaking of sensitive documents. Now, let's get more insight on this from Gavin McFadgen, Director for the Center of Investigative Journalism from City University. Thanks very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
First of all, let's comment on what actually took place at the Guardian offices, where you had hard drives and computers destroyed. What do you make of this kind of action from the government?
Well, it's very forceful. It's in another country, they would smash it up and smash the people up. Here they tend to be very polite. So it was all done in a rather gentlemanly sort of way. But the force of the state, the full force of the state, was behind everything they said, and so nobody was going to disagree with it.
It's understandable that journalists would be upset by this, but the government seems to believe that they are justified in their actions, that they have the right to do so, and that they are in the right, saying that the police have a duty to protect the public from a national security.
Then they have an obligation, if they want to protect the public, to tell the public what it is they're protecting them from. A generalized statement about terrorism in general doesn't really do the trick. You've got to be able to say, well, the information he's got would endanger the public for the following reasons. You've got to have reasons for it. No such reasons have been advanced. So no questions were asked about terrorism. They were only asked about the Guardian and about the journalism issues.
So you are working for the Center of Investigative Journalism, and many commentators have talked about the impact this will have on investigations. What do you think will happen? Perhaps quite the opposite, that more people would want to investigate.
Yeah, it'll be a chilling effect if, for example, somebody goes to prison as a result of this, or if Rusbridger himself is arrested, which is extremely unlikely. Rusbridger, it must be said, has said in the paper this morning that he has withheld information that he had in fear of the national security state and the implications of that material. So he's taking quite a safe course here, not a radical one at all. But the issue is quite profound in terms of journalism as a whole, because it's going to encourage a great deal, but not so much from journalists. It's going to encourage it from whistleblowers. exactly the people that they don't want to encourage are going to be encouraged by all this. The journalists themselves will be frightened, as they always are, of everything. But the whistleblowers have considerable courage. I think you can expect some extraordinary announcements probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Thank you very much for your thoughts there. So as we continue following this developing story, it does give us a glimpse of perhaps how far it appears that the British government is willing to go in terms of stopping that reporting on NSA and global surveillance and getting hold of those documents. And I had contacted the GCHQ today, and they said they are aware of the story in The Guardian, but have no comment to make.
Well, let's further discuss what implications this could have for reporters with freelance journalist Tony Gosselin. And he joins me now live from Bristol. Tony, thank you so much for joining us here on RT. Well, we often hear about the journalists being intimidated for the work they are doing in other countries, but Britain has so far maintained the reputation of having a press freedom. So is this about to change?
Well, it's already sliding, isn't it? I think we've seen over the last few months, particularly since this Snowden revelation, that there are divided loyalties. I mean, the problem being that we've had this revelation that actually the Pentagon were involved in this decision to make this arrest of David Miranda. I mean, horrendous situation to be in, where he's got no access to a lawyer. He's in a sort of extrajudicial area in the transit lounge at Heathrow Airport. So it seems to me that the police who do the arresting at Heathrow should be thinking about who pays their wages. Is it the British taxpayer or is it the Pentagon?
Well, let's now take a look at the situation the Guardian editor-in-chief has found himself in. I mean, and his revelation specifically that officials forced him to destroy the NSA data. Could he have reacted differently, and what would have been the implications of that?
Well, it's extremely difficult for the editor of a big newspaper like The Guardian to take these people on because they do rely on them for comments and stories as well. So this is what I mean, and we just heard about the chilling effect. This is really important for the public to understand. When something like this arrest of David Miranda takes place, the effect is that it actually discourages our newspapers and our other journalists from doing their work. Particularly when you've got police going into the situations like happened on Sunday, where they're taking someone on a long detention. Not only are specific bits of information being taken, but we have to ask the question, what is the story that would be going around the world today if they hadn't made those arrests? Of course, they're using the Terrorism Act to do this, in Clause 7 of the Terrorism Act. And we have to ask ourselves, is this person actually really a terrorist? And was this what the legislation was originally passed for? Now, if we don't have healthy, thriving newspapers and investigative journalism prepared to ask the difficult questions of our security services, we're moving closer and closer towards a police state here in Britain.
Well, let's now talk about the protection of journalists and what sort of legally can be done to protect them. I mean, The Guardian says that it's been doing most of its reporting and editing on the NSA scandal from New York and not from London. Why is that? I mean, does it mean that U.S. laws protect journalists better than UK laws?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's in the US Constitution, the protection of the right for the free press. We don't have such a thing here in Britain. I mean, all we've relied on, really, is the goodwill of the establishment over the years to make sure that we do have a free press and also to a plural press, that is to say lots of different voices, lots of different outlets and lots of different editors. I mean, this is putting that under threat, isn't it? One by one, the bravest, the most outspoken of the people, I mean, literally, these are the public's eyes and ears. They're being stopped. They're being covered by the police in doing things like this. Let's remember what this is all about in the first place. Let's never lose sight of that. What's been going on here by the NSA and GCHQ is the biggest illegal phishing operation in history. Massive amounts of data, of personal private data of individuals who are innocent, have done nothing wrong, has been being illegally collected by these organisations, and we need to know why, who's done that. And my personal opinion is that the people behind it who authorised it should go to jail.
All right, Tony, thank you so much for your views there. Tony Gosselin, investigative journalist, talking to us from the UK.